Madaling umaga ng Sabado, ika-28 ng Setyembre taong 1901, habang nasa kalagitnaan ng pag-aalmusal ang 78 Amerikanong sundalo, isang malakas na sigaw ang narinig na sinundan ng pagkalembang ng kampana ng simbahan. Mga armadong kalalakihang bitbit ang kani-kanilang mga bolo ang sumugod at pinaghatak ang mga Amerikanong sundalo. Mula sa bilang na 78, 48 dito ang namatay, habang 26 naman ang nasugatan. Tinawag na worst single defeat at the hands of the Filipinos ang insidente. Isang malaking insulto sa bansang Amerika. Bilang ganti, iniutos ni Major General Adna R. Shafi ang mahigpit na pamamalakad sa mga Pilipino, lalo na sa lalawigan ng Samar. Dahil dito, isinagawa ni Brigadier General Jacob Howling Smith ang karumaldumal na pagmasaker at walang habas na panununog sa mga kabahayan. Sa pag-atake sa bayan ng Balangiga, kinuha ng mga Amerikanong sundalo ang 3 kampana ng simbahan ng San Lorenzo de Martir. 2 dito nakalagak ngayon sa F.E. Warren Air Force Base sa Estados Unidos, habang ang isa naman ay nasa Camp Red Cloud sa South Korea. Mahigit 1 siglo na ang nakalipas, ngunit sa kabila ng mahabang panahon, dama pa rin ang pangungulila ng munting bayan sa Samar sa kampanang hanggang ngayon ay pilit na ipinagkakait na maibalik. Ang kampana ng Balangiga.
Problema ng Balangiga stories that sagupaan lang what happened on September 28, 1901 na massacre yung soldiers. Almost sa early literature, walang mention kung ano ba nangyari in between. So sa American version of events, parang lang sila. Wala silang, they came here for a very good purpose, pero kahit yun, parang walang apparently ungrateful yung mga Filipino. They were massacred and they died. At saka yung Filipino naman, basically, mayroon naman kayong kasalanan. So, parang ganon. At saka, ginamit ninyo yung bells, pero there were now some contradictions. Ilang bells ba talaga ang pinatunog? So, there were a lot of versions in this story na hindi magkakatugma.
Ngunit hindi batid sa nakararami na may ilang grupo ng mga Pilipino at mga Amerikano ang tahimik na nagtutulungan. Dala ang malasakit na maitama ang mga mali at mabago ang kwento ng isa sa pinakamalagim na yugto ng ating kasaysayan.
I'm Dennis Wright. I am a career naval officer, served 33 years in the United States Navy. Been living in the Philippines, in and out of the Philippines since 1972. I first got involved after a number of efforts on previous projects. One was the restoration of the Clark Veterans Cemetery. It has over 9,000 veterans and their dependents interred here at Clark that had been abandoned and forgotten. And we were successful in getting that transferred to the American Battle Monuments Commission to maintain. After that, we also started looking at more U.S. Philippine-American history. And one of the big issues out of the U.S. Philippine-American early history were the bells that were taken from the Church of San Lorenzo de Martir.
Ang kampana ng simbahang San Lorenzo de Martir, o mas kilala bilang Balangiga Bell, ay ilan lamang sa mga kampanang kinuha ng mga Amerikanong sundalo noong kainitan ng Philippine-American War dahil sa tinutunaw ito ng mga gerilyang Pilipino para gawing bala sa kanilang pakikidigma. Isa na nga rito ang kampana ng San Pedro Bell na natagpuan sa US Military Academy sa West Point, USA, na ngayon ay naibalik na sa dati nitong parokya, ang Church of Saints Peter and Paul sa bayan ng Bawan, La Union.
The San Pedro bell was not known. The church was not aware the bell existed. The city of Bawang, La Union did not know the bell existed. It was just lost to history. During our research, we had identified, especially through Dan McKinnon's efforts, that there was a bell at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point that came from the Philippines. So Dan was able to get the inscription off the bells, and we were able to locate where they came from. I went in and just did simple Google searches on some of the things on there and found out that, well, Bawang La Union, that was not La Union, but Bawang was on. So you can imagine, here's a church that did not know they had a bell taken in 1901. And there were many bells that were being taken in 1901 by either Filipinos fighting for independence or the American forces to deprive Filipinos from taking the bells.
Ngunit hindi tulad ng San Pedro Bell, ang kampana ng Balangiga ay nananatiling naiugnay sa isang malagim nitong nakalipas na hanggang ngayon naghahadlang upang ito'y muling maibalik sa bansa. Ayon sa mga kwento, nagsilbi itong hudyat sa pag-atake ng mga Balangigawon sa mga Amerikanong sundalo na nagresulta sa pagkakapaslang ng 48 sundalo mula sa Company C ng 9th U.S. Infantry na noon ay nakadeploy sa bayan ng Balangiga. Mariin naman itong itinatanggi ng Balangiga Research Group, isang organisasyong nabuo na may layuning linawin at itama ang buong kwento ng Balangiga.
We had a lot of sources. The fellow members of Balangiga Research Group basically provided me with other sources, including materials that were taken from the National Archives, U.S. National Archives in Maryland, and Jean Wall also had her own family archives sa kanyang tatay ni Private Gamlin. And I also had a comprehensive account of accounts ng Filipino side. So pinaghihimay-himay namin yung mga incidents, events, at saka we really basically tried to recreate a new story. We deconstructed the Balangiga massacre, yung nandoon na sa mga aklat. We deconstructed it and reconstructed it, the story right from the start, using accounts of everybody involved, including soldiers, yung mga ganon. So including letters sent to the families, and some soldiers also wrote letters to their publications in the United States. So we were able to get copies of those. I was provided copies of those, and mayroon din mga photographs pinadala sa amin. So our group basically we somehow collected perhaps the biggest library of materials about the event, and it is recognized both by the Philippine and American sides. Even the veterans in Wyoming who opposed the return of the bells agree that our group is supposed to be the group to be consulted in this matter.
A lot of people focus on why the Americans took the bells, but it's part of a bigger problem that was going on at the time. During the period of time of the Philippine-American War, or the Filipinos fighting for independence, initially from Spain and then from the U.S., the Filipinos were taking church bells, sometimes with the consent of the pastor, but sometimes not. But Filipinos were confiscating bells from churches, and they were taking and melting them, ruining them, and then making weapons. The Americans would take the bells to keep the Filipinos from making weapons.
Patunay dito ang nakuhang litrato ng mga abandonadong kampana noong taong 1901 sa Sablan, Benguet. Nagpapakita ng mga nakolektang kampana na balak sanang tunawin para gawing bala ng mga tumatakas na gerilya mula sa Cordillera papuntang Isabela.
A lot of times I find Filipinos get very indignant that the Americans took our bells. But what they're not recognizing is that Filipinos were taking the bells and destroying them, totally destroying them. And so had the Americans not taken the San Pedro bell, it would have been lost in perpetuity, but it was returned. Now, had the Americans not maybe taken the Balangiga bells, they may have too ultimately been melted into scrap. There was nothing wrong with the soldiers to remove the bells and put them in storage to keep them being made into weapons. But they should have been given back on July 4th, 1902 at the end of the war. But they weren't. They were taken illegally against General Order 100 guidelines to the U.S.
Ang Labor Code o mas kilala ngayon bilang General Order 100 ang sinusundang Military Code of Conduct ng Estados Unidos na nilagdaan ni US President Abraham Lincoln noong ika-24 ng Abril taong 1863. Ayon sa nakapaloob ng Article 34 ng nasabing utos, hindi pwedeng angkinin bilang public property ang isang pribadong ari-arian gaya ng simbahan. At kung kinuha man ito, dapat maibalik ito sa tunay na nagmamay-ari pagkatapos ng digmaan, alinsunod naman sa Article 31. Sinang-ayunan nito ng 1899 Hague Convention on the Laws and Custom of War, isang pandaigdigang kasunduan patungkol sa laws of war and war crimes, kung saan kabilang ang Estados Unidos sa mga bansang pumirma rito. Ang kaso, may ilang mga veteranong Amerikano ang pilit na iniuugnay ang kampana sa pagkamatay ng mga Amerikanong sundalo sa Balangiga. Dahilan kung bakit nananatili ito sa Estados Unidos bilang war booty. Isang paniniwala na gustong baguhin ni retired US Rear Admiral Dan McKinnon sa pamamagitan ng pagsulat ng kanyang living essay na pinamagatang The Bells of San Lorenzo de Martir, Bells of Opportunity and Hope. Nanilbihan din siya sa bansa bilang US Commanding Officer ng Digdipo sa Subic.
At that time, when our soldiers went into the Philippines in 1900, they were handed a little booklet. It's called General Order Number 100. It came from something called the Labor Code or Lincoln's Codes, which was published in 1863 on rules of war. In our Civil War, we were not nice guys, the North or the South. President Lincoln wanted to change all that. It told them how to treat people and property. The law was very clear at the time. You not take people's personal property. And all church property is personal property. I mean, I could take your property if I wanted to use your horse or your wagon or your house, I could take it. When the war is over, you get it back. So what you had here was two bells that were personal property of the church in Balangiga.
Dahil itinuturing na malaking insulto ang nangyaring pag-atake, agad iniutos ni US Army Brigadier General Howling Jacob Smith ang karumaldumal na pagpatay sa mga residente at panununog sa mga kabahayan sa buong rehiyon ng Samar ng 11th Infantry Regiment mula sa Tacloban. Dito kanilang kinuha ang 1557 Queen Mary Tudor Cannon kasama ang 3 kampana ng simbahan ng San Lorenzo de Martir. Inilagak ang mga ito sa headquarters ng 11th Infantry Base o Camp Bumpus hanggang sa huling yugto ng Philippine-American War. Sa bagong binuong 9th Infantry Regiment sa Calbayog, ibinigay ang pinakamaliit sa 3 kampana sa paniniwalang ito ang nagsilbing signal bell sa pag-atake ng mga residente, habang nananatili na sa kanila ang 2 malaking kampana. Sa pagtapos ng digmaan taong 1902, dinala ng 9th US Infantry Regiment ang signal bell sa Estados Unidos bilang paggunita sa mga kasamahang namatay sa Balangiga. Binansagan ito sa pangalang Manchu Bell at kinalaunan dinala sa 9th Infantry sa US Camp Red Cloud sa Ujeongbu, South Korea, kung saan kasalukuyan itong nakalagak bilang war booty, alinsunod sa Title 10 ng US Code 2579. Samantala, sa paglisa naman ng 11th Infantry Regiment ng Pilipinas noong 1904, imbis na ibalik sa simbahan, dinala naman ang 2 natirang kampana at kanyon sa Estados Unidos. Kinalaunan, isinama ang mga ito sa US Army Transport Shipment papuntang Fort D.A. Russell na ngayon ay F.E. Warren Air Force Base sa Cheyenne, Wyoming.
In 1967, a small group of Air Force officers rediscovered these 2 old bells, and it was like, wow, those are pretty neat. They're antique. Why don't we put them on display? So they built a brick display stand with 2 bells in it. these officers that found them and put them on display, they feel an affinity, like it's their idea. And at that time, there was not much known really about them. Remember, the Balangiga Research Group didn't really get into effort until the early the last 20 years. So there wasn't a lot of information. A lot of it was based on fake news. But when people base their beliefs on fake news and real news comes along, they find it often hard to accept the real news. They still have their belief system in fake news. Now, over time, we have won the hearts and minds of many Wyoming veterans. So when we talk about the veterans opposing, it's a very small handful of people. We sometimes refer to it as the Gang of Five, a small group, a very small but very influential. They were senior officers. They're active in the Elks and the Kiwanis and the Rotary and the local civic and government groups. It's the social elite, if you will, of Cheyenne. And Wyoming has 3 elected officials, 2 senators and 1 Congress lady. They have their ear, and they have convinced their elected officials that the Bells should stay in Wyoming. And the elected officials are only acting on what they perceive to be the interests of their constituents.
Mula taong 1958, magkailang beses nanawagan ng simbahan ng San Lorenzo de Martir, pati na ang pamahalaan, para mabawi ang mga kampanya ng Balangiga mula sa Estados Unidos. Ngunit sa kabila ng mga panawagan, patuloy nagmamatigas ang nasabing grupo. Patunay dito ang isang liham na ipinadala kay U.S. Senator Spark Matsunaga taong 1987 na ninindigan kung bakit dapat manatili sa Estados Unidos ang mga kampana. Isa na nga sa mga tumangkang bawiin ng kampana ang nooy Secretary of National Defense Fidel V. Ramos taong 1990, kung saan nakipagpulong ito kay U.S. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney na dating congressman ng Wyoming. Ngunit hindi ito nagtagumpay. Taong 1994, sa pagbisita ng dating U.S. President Bill Clinton, muling nakiusap si Pangulong Fidel Ramos para maibalik ang kampana sa bansa. Habang sinang-ayunan nito ni dating U.S. President Clinton, sa huli, hindi ito nagwagi sa kadahilanan na illegal ito dahil sa probisyong nagbabawal sa pagsasauli ng mga war memorial objects.
The Wyoming delegation, about 20 years ago, enabled provisions into a very large U.S. law known as the National Defense Authorization Act. So the National Defense Authorization Act is a law of thousands of pages. It deals with troop strengths, how many ships, how many airplanes, how many tanks, foreign policy associated with conflicts, and it deals with budgets. It's huge. Embedded in just a couple lines in these thousands of pages was a provision that the Wyoming Wyoming legislation delegates to the U.S. Congress had inserted that restricted the removal or the dismantling of veteran memorial objects. It doesn't say anything about bells. There's no bells mentioned. It was very crafty. Veteran memorial objects that cannot be returned to the countries from which they were taken. But it was very discriminatory because it was targeted solely to protect the Balangiga Bells in Wyoming without mentioning the bells.
Ika-30 ng Setyembre taong 2017, nawalan na ng bisa ang batas na sumasaklaw dito at papalitan ng bagong National Defense Authorization 2018.
There's a new law, National Defense Authorization Act 2018, that would normally succeed it. That has not been totally cleared by both the House and the Senate and has been submitted to be the new law. So we have been working to get the provisions removed from National Defense Authorization 2017 from the NDA 2018. We were successful and group in Washington, D.C., U.S.-Philippine Society, Squire Patton Boggs, led by law firm, led by former U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines Frank Wisner, Admiral Dan McKinnon, Mr. Henry Howard, another founding board director of the U.S.-Philippine Society, John Maisto and Hank Hendrickson, the leaders of our U.S.-Philippine Society, all very actively working Capitol Hill to remove the language. They were successful in getting that language removed from the Senate version. On the House version, language continued.
I'm Hank Hendrickson. I'm the Executive Director of the U.S.-Philippine Society in Washington, D.C. The Society is a binational, non-political, independent organization that aims to promote awareness of today's Philippines among key American audiences. We also have an interest in strengthening relations between the United States and the Philippines. The U.S.-Philippine Society was involved in a couple of ways. There are several directors of the U.S.-Philippine Society who were personally interested in seeing if there's a path to the return of the bells. But also, we had a memorandum of agreement with some firms, law firms here, that provided pro bono legal service, researching the legal restrictions that previously existed on a return of the bells, and working to help set up appointments where we could reach people on Capitol Hill who were working on that legislation. It's very interesting that, and I credit Society Director and former Ambassador Frank Wisner for his role in ensuring that the U.S.-Philippine Society became the institutional basis for working on the return of the Bells of Balangiga.
Isa rin sa aktibong nakipagtulungan ang Amerikanong dating high school exchange student sa Ateneo de Cagayan, Xavier University.
My name is Henry Howard, and I first went to the Philippines from my birthplace of Baltimore, Maryland in 1974. As an AFS exchange student, I attended my last year of high school at Ateneo de Cagayan, Xavier University High School in Cagayan de Oro, where I learned to speak Cebuano perfectly. This year, I'm very proud to say that due to our lobbying efforts, and the lobbying efforts were undertaken by me, by former Ambassador Frank Wisner, by former U.S. Navy Captain Dennis Wright, and former U.S. Navy Admiral Dan McKinnon, as well as a support staff of others. We were able to change the law, the National Defense Appropriations Act, and expressly change it so that the bells could be returned once the Secretary of Defense signs a certificate, and some provision is made to build some type of memorial to replace the bells in Wyoming. I volunteered to make duplicates of the bells and give them to the individuals in Wyoming that have been the proponents of keeping the bells. And despite the fact that we inserted language in the NDAA, which, won the battle against those individuals in Wyoming, we will still provide them the duplicate bells as a gesture of goodwill, because there is no conflict between the United States and the Philippines in any way, shape, or form, and we want to keep it that way.
Bago pa man maganap ito, nanawagan na si Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte sa Estados Unidos para ibalik ang kampana ng Balangiga sa kanyang ikalawang State of the Nation Address sa Batasan.
Give us back those Balangiga bells. They are ours. They belong to the Philippines. They are part of our national heritage. Isauli naman ninyo. masakit yun sa amin.
So totally surprised when President Duterte raised it. But I'm thankful he did, because it added a degree of importance to the issue. It helped focus the spotlight on the bells of San Lorenzo de Martir.
We are undertaking efforts at this point in time, and we have already initiated efforts to have the Secretary of Defense make that certification. We've already told the Secretary of Defense that he doesn't need to get a budget allocation for a memorial in Cheyenne, Wyoming, because we will pay for it. And we have made arrangements to transport the bells back to the Philippines at no cost to the United States government. So I think the stars are aligned, and I'm crossing my fingers, and I asked the Bishop of Balangiga and the people of Eastern Samar to say a prayer that all of this happens promptly.
The senior surviving non-commissioned officer in Balangiga, at the time of the attack, he survived. His name was Sergeant Frank Betron. One would think if he had a lot of animosity or acrimony he held towards Filipinos or hatred, that in 1902, 9 months later, when he got out of the U.S. Army, he would have run right back to the U.S. But what did he do? He got a job as a civilian quartermaster here in the Philippines. He married a Filipina, raised a very large family with 47 grandkids. He passes away in 1916, 15 years later, and he's buried at Clark. He forgave, and he was involved. He witnessed it. Jean Wall, the daughter of Private Adolf Gamlin, a survivor. He was the individual who was initially attacked during the attack, that started the whole attack. She's still living. In her heart, she wants the bells to go back. And then there's Samantha Hoffman. Samantha Hoffman is a cousin of one of the fatalities, of one of the soldiers, Private Robert Booth, who died in the encounter. His cousin is living today in Michigan. She wants the bells to go back. If people who were actually involved in the encounter want the bells to go back, survivors, daughters of a survivor, relatives of a fatality, they were there. They want the bells to go home. Why would some Minuteman missile-based Air Force officer argue to keep the bells? He's never been to Balangiga. There were no Wyoming veterans that were in the encounter. There were no Wyoming veterans in Balangiga. It makes no sense. That's what's so baffling about this. So my message to the veterans in Wyoming, first of all, they're on board. To that small minority group in Cheyenne, do the right thing and return the bells. That's my message.
Ika-10 ng buwan ng Agosto taong 2018, sa araw mismo ng paggunita sa pista ni San Lorenzo de Martir, nilagdaan ni United States Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis ang dokumento na nag-uutos na maibalik ang kampana ng Balangiga sa simbahan ng San Lorenzo de Martir sa bayan ng Balangiga, Eastern Samar.
Well, it's very meaningful. The return of these bells meaningful for Balangiga kasi if only for the function of the bells. Ano ba yung sa bells? It's basically yung sa kay Hemingway, for whom the bell tolls. Bells are not basically for war. They are for kung may namatay, for may isinilang, may ikinasal. So basically, church bells are in fact the soul of a community, and they should be returned where they belong.
Mahigit isang siglo na ang lumipas. Matagal nang natapos ang digmaan. Naging masakit man ang mga naging tagpo sa Balangiga. Hindi man ito mababago ang nakaraan. Mapapawi naman nito ang lungkot at pangungulila sa pagbabalik ng kampanang naging piping saksi sa kabayanihan at trahedya ng mga mamamayan sa bayan ng Balangiga.
History reminds us that all wars end. In returning the Bells of Balangiga to our ally and our friend, the Philippines, we pick up our generation's responsibility to deepen the respect between our peoples. To those who fear that we lose something by returning the bells, please hear me when I say that bells mark time, but courage is timeless.